And it looks like we are live. Hey everyone, super happy to be here. I'm in the lovely home of my darling and dear friend Karen Morris, who I'm going to introduce you to here in a second. And in Los Angeles, I was able to find a crystal that I have been looking for one of the next phases of my shamanic training. This is what we call an extraction crystal. And a lot of you have been kind of just asking me casually, so like, what is a shamanic healing? What happens? How does it work? So I'm going to kind of explain a little bit about what that is exactly and what happens and what to expect. And then Karen is going to share just a little bit of her experience. We did a session on her yesterday. And then we're going to talk about our adventures today trying to find this gorgeous, gorgeous crystal. So so right now I'm still in the early stages of the training, right? I'm about 6 weeks in. So right now the only process that I have been trained to do, well, there's two, but the primary process is an illumination. So I thought I would first just kind of explain to everybody exactly what illumination is, what happens during an illumination, and what to expect should you decide you want to get one. So the illumination process is designed to deal with stagnant or negative energies in our energetic field. So what we do is we open up sacred space, and then I have a conversation with the client about what are the kinds of primary issues that they're looking to deal with. And sometimes what I'll do is I have an intake form on my website when you book with me that asks a lot of the basic questions, so that before I even go into the session with you, I can know a little bit about what kinds of experiences you've had in the past and what has worked for you in the past and what hasn't worked for you. And it's also, I like to make sure that my people have a good wellness care support team. Because we certainly all know that our U.S. American healthcare system is not a healthcare system. It is a disease treatment system. And what we do as shamans is we help the client create the conditions for well-being. So in that illumination process, we sit down, we talk about what the issues are that the person is dealing with. And we're not talking specifically about physical symptoms because, as I said, this isn't the kind of healing that is to work specifically on symptoms. This is a kind of healing that works deeper at the energetic issues that are underlying the kinds of habits and beliefs that might lead us into situations of unwellness. So we have that conversation, we have that initial conversation, and then what I have the client do is I have them choose one of these stones that's on my mesa, on my altar, that they want to blow those issues into that stone. And so then that stone becomes the medicine stone for the person. Then what I do is I open up my personal sacred space, and I extend that over the client, and that works both on Zoom or in person. And then I use my pendulum to determine which chakra is out of alignment. If you're not familiar with the chakra system, there's tons and tons of information out there. And so using the pendulum, or some people use muscle testing, some people use other methods. And actually, as we train, they tell us that we will start to begin to cultivate the gifts of perception, where we can rely less on the tool of the pendulum and more on just being able to look at a client and perceive what the situation is. So I use my pendulum to check which chakra is out of alignment. I check all of them, and we always start with the lowest affected chakra. And then what happens is I put the stone on the affected chakra. And if we're working virtually, I put that on. I have like a set of 7 stones that each represents each of the chakras. And then I put the stone on that chakra. And then I go to the person's head, or if it's virtually, to where their head would be. And then I work with 2 acupressure points at the base of the skull on deepening and releasing. And Most of the time I tell the clients, you don't actually have to tell me specifically what issues you're blowing into the stone. And that's what makes this really different from talk therapy, is you don't actually have to do a lot of talking. As long as you have the intention of what you want to focus on, then my job is just to be the vessel for the energy to come through to do whatever healing that you need. So then I spend probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, usually just kind of until I feel like the process has come to some point of completion. Then I will shed sacred light onto the chakra from my sacred energy field. And that's the illumination process. We are flooding that with light to clear away all of the negative, dark, or stagnant energy. And then respin the chakra, and I usually respin all the chakras on the way out, and I just check them all to make sure they're all happily spinning and balanced. And then we close our sacred space. So that's really essentially what the process is. Now, what happens sometimes is sometimes the client will have emotional releases. Sometimes people cry. Sometimes people get nauseous. Sometimes people have their own visions. Sometimes people get memories coming up from childhood. Sometimes I get visions. I get like symbols that come to me, and then I talk with the client afterwards about what those might mean. Sometimes we don't know for about a week what the symbols are. And the whole point is this process itself, even if you don't think you're feeling anything right away, typically this is the kind of work that this plants the seeds for your own journey toward wellness. So Karen, would you like to come and join the conversation? Sure. And thank you so much for letting me do this live stream right here from your living room. So I think it would be really helpful for people to know just kind of what did you experience while you were lying on the proverbial table? With as much as you're comfortable sharing, of course.
Yeah, no, it was mostly just a very deep relaxation. I'm kind of new to a lot of this stuff. I've just recently started doing acupuncture for the first time. And that's been pretty amazingly transformative with helping with a hip issue that I've been having. And I had no idea. I was always afraid to try acupuncture because I'm not good with needles. I had to give a lot of blood when I was little because of a health issue that I had. And so I developed a lot of issues, especially around like taking blood out of your arm. And so I was always afraid that I was going to react poorly to acupuncture. But mostly it's been great. I mean, occasionally they'll hit a spot that, that freaks some part of my body out. But for the most part, I was really impressed with how much deep relaxation you can get. Like when they first put the needles in you and you're sitting there, I was always like, am I ever going to be able to relax for the 10 to 20 minutes that they want me to be sitting here? And usually by the time they come in, I'm like blissed out and half asleep. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's been that time already. Okay,
nice.
And so we didn't obviously do acupuncture, but the acupressure points at the base of the skull were definitely reflexively relaxing. So
I am the worst podcaster ever. I did not turn my phone off. Okay. Hold that thought. Get rid of that. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Oh.
But yeah, so if you have the opportunity to do it in person, I do think that was a nice thing of having her hands underneath my head and holding me up. There was definitely a sense of relaxation of hitting those two particular points. And then for me, it was just really just a deep relaxation thing. I didn't get any visions. I just tried to use my yogic breathing to try to just keep my body calm and my mind calm. And I'm curious over the next few days if anything interesting is gonna
I am curious too. Yeah.
I'm not going to share it here, but Laurelann knows there's a lot of stuff going on in my world with a lot of friends going through some things and family going through stuff and myself going through stuff. So there's been a lot of input.
Yeah. And, I really feel so strongly that so many of us right now, like the last 12 months have...
16 months or 15, whatever, however long it is. It's way more than 12 now. We can't even say it's a year. It's way more than a year.
It's more than a year. I think that so many of us have been going through at least the beginning stages of some kind of transformation. I know for me, I've been through massive transformation in the last 16 months, but especially for the last 12 months.
I don't know that I know anybody who hasn't had some massive transformation, and not always good, not always bad. Just it's a lot going on. There's a lot of that. There's such an us them mentality right now in the world, and I'm as big a person, unfortunately, adding to that as possible. I'm trying to not, but the more that we can start thinking of each other as
fellow humans,
all connected.
Yeah.
I just have to say this thing. My meditation teacher, Emily Fletcher, I do the Ziva technique of meditation, and my favorite quote from hers is, what is it? There's only one thing, and we are all it.
Right. And
the sooner that we as people on this planet all start to understand that and behave that way,
and we had such a beautiful moment so we were on a mission this morning. We were on a mission for salad for lunch.
Yes.
And
gotta be healthy.
Gotta be healthy.
When you're trying to cleanse, you gotta be healthy.
Right, exactly. And
while you're not being healthy, with the cocktails and the other things.
Right. And I've been pretty good with
You've been
the wine.
Really good. And you've helped me be better than I usually am.
Oh, so. Good. But our shamanic teacher says, this isn't about being some sort of puritanical, entity.
Thank goodness.
Right? It's about enjoying life.
Yeah,
it is about
a little.
Exactly.
We can't all just live in just denial all the time of denying ourselves of everything. That's just
no. And a good friend of mine said to me a couple of months ago when I was first starting the shamanic diet, she was like, be careful, because if you're doing too much of a radical diet, your body can rebel.
Oh, yeah.
It can let go.
Because your body will say, no, I liked that.
Right. Exactly. So I'm going to start
a little bit of that.
I'm going to start my next detox protocol on September 1st. So if anybody wants to join me, please let me know. You can comment in the chat on this. You can send me a message. Yeah, cooking with flavor. Exactly. So we had this really lovely experience this morning when we were looking for, let's actually back up. Let's talk about our adventure, right?
Okay, sure.
So I live in Mesa, Arizona, as most of you know.
And I'm here in Echo Park, Los Angeles, very near Dodger Stadium and that kind of part of town.
And we're both vaccinated, thank goodness.
Yes. And it's the first time we've seen each other in
in a couple of years.
3 years. 3 years. I think this is our first time seeing each other in person. We've been doing a lot of Zooming during the pandemic because we've been trying to keep each other
sane. And what was really kind of beautiful about our friendship is that it seemed like during the worst of the pandemic, anytime one of us was like, I feel like I should check on Karen, she would be like, I'm so glad you reached out. Or anytime she was like, I think I'm going to check on Laurelann, I was having a really crappy day.
Well, and there would just be times where or if I was having a crappy day, I would be like, I need to text Laurelann because we need to Zoom tonight or tomorrow or something. And we would get on Zoom and spend an hour or two just chatty.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wasn't able to find in Mesa the kind of crystal. I think this is the very last tool that I had needed for my shaman toolkit. Yay, and I have it. And even though I'm close to Sedona and I could have very easily gone up to Sedona to try to find a crystal up there, Sedona hadn't fit into my schedule yet. And I was like, here I am in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
we gotta be crystal shops here.
We were talking this morning going, she asked me, Karen, do you know are there any? And I was like, honestly, I don't really know a lot about crystal shops, but I said, let's just Google it. And we found 3, turned out to be quite extensive crystal shops that were all within if we left my house and went to each one of them, it was probably under 10 minutes to get to each one from my house.
Which in LA, that's practically next door.
Yeah, it's crazy how close they were.
Yeah.
And so we first went out and went to the first one because one of them opened earlier than the other ones. And so that's the first one we went to.
So we went in. It was a cute little shop, but it didn't have anything like this.
We'll give them a shout out. It was called House of Intuition.
House of Intuition.
Boulevard, near Alvarado.
Lovely shop. And
I've driven by it 10,000 times, never gone inside.
So yep. They had a little tarot spread going on in the fireplace. They didn't have it there. So then we were like, okay.
And also every place that we went to, everybody was super nice and helpful and instantly were asking if they could help. And Laurelann was instantly saying, this is what I'm looking for. And both the first 2 places were like, Yeah, I don't think we have that, but well, let's look a little bit. So
yeah, and I had priced these out online, but I just didn't feel comfortable buying something like this online because what they tell us when we're shopping for these, I'll try to put it up closer to the camera too.
it's really beautiful.
It needs to be perfectly clear. It needs to not have any smokiness. It needs to not have any occlusions. It needs to not have any flaws.
And what did she say? This is Vogel?
No, Vogel is the name of the person that I think made it.
Yes, I think she said this is a disciple of Vogel cut this.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's why they call it a Vogel crystal.
Yeah.
Sorry, getting backtracked. So
buying it online is
I was like, I'm not going to buy something like that online. I need to see it. I need to feel it. I need to.
Well, and watching her hold it in her hand when she first had it handed to her, it was pretty impressive and magical. And watching, like you clearly had a moment of communion with that thing. Because there were two that she was trying to decide between. And,
one was smaller, and much cheaper.
One she liked, but the other one was like, as soon as she put this one in her hand, it was like, oh.
Yeah.
We've all had those moments.
Definitely.
This is what they were telling me about. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, that's a good time. So the reason it has to be so clear is because this is a crystal that we use for the process that I haven't learned yet. It's a process called extraction. And that is when a person has some sort of either entity or even the soul of another person who has passed on but hasn't passed on fully to where they need to go in the afterlife.
So like they haven't let go kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And what often happens, I'm told, is that, like, let's say, for example, Uncle Joe dies but isn't ready to die yet and isn't ready to go on to the next stage yet. And so Uncle Joe will just attach his spirit to whatever is the closest and most receptive
interesting. So it's
person.
Not necessarily the person. It's not necessarily their issue. It's actually they just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time, depending on how you look at it.
And often it's children that are the most receptive. And so sometimes a child will be carrying that soul for years and decades before they even realize that they've been acting out Uncle Joe's issues their whole life instead of, isn't that fascinating?
Wow, yeah.
Now, what we were told is that the reason it has to be so pure is that for Uncle Joe to know this is the place he needs to go, it has to look like a beautiful cathedral of light. And so it has to be pure and it has to be clear. Because otherwise, you could still get Uncle Joe out of there, but it could be a little disruptive. There might be a little resistance. You might need a second shaman to help, extract.
One of the women mentioned that if it had occlusions in it, that could catch on, that the soul could get caught on that. And so obviously you want this process to be as
fluid and smooth,
seamless as
possible.
Yeah.
So the first shop was lovely. We didn't find it there. Then we had, the other thing, it's so nice to go into, we were asked up, of course, because Delta is real right now, especially in LA.
Well, in LA, the mask mandate started back again on midnight of the 17th of July. Anytime anybody's indoors now, we have to be masked. So.
But it was just reminding me of the value of locally owned independent stores of whatever you're looking for are exponentially more valuable than anything you can get on Amazon. Yeah. So it was a lovely adventure doing that. So then we found our fabulous salad. Do you want to give a shout out?
Yeah, we went to Forage, which is another place on Sunset Boulevard over by Sunset Junction, which is delicious salads and foods and lots of locally sourced ingredients.
And I never in a million years thought I would say that I had a kale salad, and I really loved it. But it was good. It was really good. And I had roasted beets, and then I had sauteed broccoli, and it was like, so much good
and
food.
It was way too much food. It's like 2 more meals.
We have leftovers for days.
And then Laurelann was looking, I said, where's the next one? I know you said it was on Santa Monica Boulevard. I said, Santa Monica hits right here. And so she looked, and it was a 3-minute drive or a 7-minute walk. And we said, hey, let's just leave the car here and go for a little walk. So
which is totally scandalous in LA. No one ever walks from one place to the next, even if it is,
And it was only like high 80s, so it wasn't anywhere near what Laurelann's used to.
Well, that's the other thing is I can't walk in Phoenix right now. It's miserable. So I'm like, I don't care how hot it is in LA. It's still better than Phoenix.
So we walked to that one and also had no luck finding what we were looking for, but another really lovely shop with fun people who were all very
very
sweet
helpful,
and
very
comely.
friendly.
They
just,
had a funny thing at this shop. They had a little troll doll with like
Crystals
coming out of
its
the hair. It was kind of funny. And then they had little mini versions of that. So
right.
that was entertaining.
And what was the name of that place? I forgot.
That one was called Spellbound Sky.
Spellbound Sky. So shout out to the Spellbound Sky folks.
So they're like right where Santa Monica comes in contact with Sunset Boulevard.
So then our time was running out. It was like 1:30, right?
It was close to that. And we were trying to get back here to get ready for this, but we knew that the other one was also close by, and we looked and it was like a 7-minute drive. So we were like, hey, let's just go. And this is the only one that I actually knew existed. Because I had been to this one once before, because my son goes to school with a kid whose mother, I think, at least used to work there. I don't know if she still does, but it's called Crystal Matrix on Glendale Boulevard in Atwater Village. And so we drove to that one. Yep. Had a little difficulty finding parking, but then finally parked and then walked over to that one. And walked around the whole store, talked to a woman. She was like, I don't know, I'm not sure. She went to the back.
She brought out like cases.
She's like, you can
clear
look through all of
crystals.
These.
Yeah.
And then we started talking to a woman who was sitting at the table we were waiting at, who I think,
and she was like, you're doing shamanic work, aren't you?
She might be. I don't know. Maybe she's the owner.
I think she is the owner.
I think she's the owner. But anyway, she was like, oh, and she called out to Donna, the woman who had been helping us. And she said, Donna, look at the Vogel crystals. And so Donna went over, and that's when we found this one and the other smaller one.
Right. Because they told us that it doesn't matter the number of facets, but this is actually what all of my fellow students have been getting, is something that looks like this. And Donna was amazing. And the thing that was so beautiful, she's like, oh, you're working with Saint Germain, aren't you? And I was like, I don't know, am I? But that's the thing is, so I'm still cultivating and figuring out what my levels of perception are, and they keep telling us that it's just a matter of time and energy and intention and cleaning the body. Mm-hmm. And I was like, thank you for the clue, because sometimes I don't always know which guides are working with me. So
and she just kept saying over and over again, oh, you're definitely working with Saint Germain. And me being the novice of not knowing all this, I'm like, is she talking about the alcohol? Is she talking about the band? I don't know. What is Saint Germain?
We need to invent a violet flame cocktail.
Oh, there you
if
go.
It doesn't already exist. So it was just so nice to be able to be in space with people who tap into what you need right away.
And Donna would have talked to us for another hour if we had the time. I mean, she was happily chatting you away.
And she was so glad to meet another person who was doing the kind of healing that the planet so desperately needs right now.
We talked about that we all need to be part of the solution right now.
Yeah.
The more people we can get on healing paths, whether it's any of these things, acupuncture, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's healing, and there's so many different roads, and they're all valid, and whatever works for you, because God knows, if you had told me, 10 years ago that I would be, a meditator that meditates 20 minutes twice a day, every day, I'm going on almost 5 years now of doing that. And I never thought I would be able to stick with it. If you told me that I'd be going to acupuncture regularly, I would be like, are you crazy? I'm going on 22 or 23 years of doing yoga now. I mean, like, all of these things are part of my healing process.
And that is so great that you mentioned whatever kind of healing works for you, because
therapy.
Therapy,
walks,
in fact,
exercise, they're all good.
The online course that I have been working on since about April, the plan is to launch it September 1st. So come back to I'll be posting about it on social media, so you'll be able to find out. But on September 1st, I have this introductory course to a lot of different alternative healing modalities, including an entire lesson on how to choose a therapist and how to know if your therapist is the right therapist for you.
Because don't ever assume that the first person you meet with is going to be the right fit.
Right, exactly. And don't give up just because the first therapist you try didn't work, because there's so many different kinds of therapy. And then even within all those modes of therapy, there's tons of different therapists. It includes that. It includes information about CBD and medical marijuana. Mm-hmm. It includes a lesson on healthy eating, because actually that is really, for me personally, that has been the core of so much of the transformation I've gone through just in the last 3 months, really.
Well, I mean, functional medicine's been talking about that for years, and I'm just now starting to learn about functional medicine, and it blows my mind how much, because we in the United States of America, we treat symptoms. We don't treat people. And whatever might work to fix a problem. Even if Laurelann and I had the exact same issue in our bodies, what would work for her will most likely not work for me, because we have different ethnicity makeups, we have different backgrounds, we have different
habits and beliefs.
Yeah, ways that we live our lives, different modalities in our thinkings about spirituality or about religion or about, God knows we both were raised in strict, religious things, and neither one of us is particularly, fond of them or practicing of them anymore.
And yet I definitely believe that I am a deeply spiritual person.
Yeah, when people ask me, I'm always like, because my husband is a self-proclaimed atheist, and I'm not an atheist. I'm what I would consider an agnostic or a spiritual person, because I was raised Catholic, but I quickly learned at a certain age that as a woman I couldn't be a part of that and be a self-respecting woman. So I gave up on that. And I just don't like, in general, organized religion is too much for me. I find my stuff should be based on what I want, and what I want. Even somebody who could be my twin sister would probably not want the same things that I want. So how could someone who is very different from me want from religion? For me, it's much more of a personal spiritual journey. So
yeah. And no offense to anyone who is religious or Christian or whatever.
We all got to find what works for us, and some people, I personally, there were times in my life where organized religion helped me and saved me. There were times where when I was away in high school at a thing and I was feeling lonely and sad and like I didn't know anybody, I went to church because I knew what that felt like. I knew that would give me a sense of community. Even if I didn't know anybody in that church, I went to church because just being there and saying the words made me feel better.
And that's the thing. It's the community. Really.
Yeah, it really is. And that's, I think, that's what so much of the spirituality that we're talking about now is all about. Is that, you find your tribe of people, and it can be through your meditation teacher or your shamanic healer or your acupuncturist or your yoga teacher or whatever.
Because we cannot deny that whether you're religious or not, there has been so much damage done to our global community in the name of the oppressive patriarchal structures of
organized religion.
Yes.
and organized anything, corporate and all that stuff. It's all very machine based and not very human based.
Right. So keep an eye out on this social media channel for the course that's going to be launching September 1st. Also, a couple of other shout outs. So I was just interviewed on another podcast called Sounds Tasty, which is a podcast
tasty.
I know, it's a podcast that focuses on the intersections of music and food. And I was like, that's me, we're the rhythm and the flavor.
Lovely.
So check out the newest podcast from Sounds Tasty. I think you can find it on whatever, Spotify, SoundCloud,
Can you
whatever.
Put a link in the
Yes, in fact, thank you. We were rushing for our adventure today, so I didn't have time to do all the prep, but I will post links afterwards. And the other podcast, we have another one of our songs on Women of Substance Radio. This time they're going to be playing, I think either next month or the following month, they're going to be playing The Space Between, which is all about that space between rage and despair that I knew so well during the entire year of 2020 and even into 2021.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Whatever could we be talking about? But the thing that I think has been so great for me personally about shamanic healing is we've all learned how to eat healthy, but that doesn't mean we're doing it. But what shamanic healing has helped me do is it has helped me release that clinging to the bad beliefs and the bad habits that have kept me going back to comfort food over and over and over again. And they have helped me really feel more free and more in charge of my choices so that I can really, last night, do you want another cocktail? No, actually, no, I don't. And I feel really good after just one, which is, that's sort of new for me.
Well, especially after the last year and a half. God knows many of us did a lot of self-medication with, I was already a mixologist who was playing a lot at home, but I went a little crazy over the last year and a half with different simple syrups and making all these different cocktails and trying all of this. I have a note list in my phone that whenever I show it to anybody, they're always like, what?
Yeah, she's got a pretty impressive setup. Yeah.
How many cocktails do you have listed here? I haven't tried them all. Some of them I invented. Some of them are classics.
Yeah.
some of them are just ones that sound interesting, and I want to have them close by when I do want to try them.
Yeah. So I think that's probably all the essentials that I wanted to cover.
Do you want to tell them about the other healing thing you did on me this morning? There was a secondary thing.
Yes.
The first healing we did yesterday morning before I did yoga. And the other interesting thing that I forgot to mention, I have no idea if they're related at all, but I've been doing Zoom yoga with my teacher, Karik Morinaga, for the entire pandemic. Like, I've been religiously doing my yoga. It's one of the things that's kept me alive in the last year and a half. He's been doing it on Zoom. And he's awesome. Maybe we'll put his link in there too, because if anybody's looking for a great Zoom yoga teacher, he's a great in-person one too, but right now he's still being safe and mostly just teaching at home. But anyway, I've been doing class with him for over 10 years in person and or on Zoom. And the last year and a half on Zoom, I've been way more regular and religious than I've ever been before, because, what the heck else did we have to do? We were trapped in our houses for a long time. And I've really grown a lot, and I've been really steady and really stable. And I've, like, my headstand practice and my handstand practice have all gone through transformations during this time. I've gotten new arm balances that I've never gotten before. And then yesterday, after the healing, my balance was really off. And I would go up I usually do a headstand 1, which is the one where you have your hands behind your head, not your hands like this. And I actually learned during the pandemic that I like that one better. I used to think the other one was more stable for me, but there's something that I learned during the pandemic that got me liking that one better. And so we did that yesterday, and I just couldn't hold it in the middle of the room the way I usually do. I kept falling out of it. And I'm like, this is really weird. Why is it? And then we went to do headstand 2, and I did that one a little bit better, but I was still, my equilibrium was definitely off. And I was like, I wonder if any of this had anything to do with the healing. And so I mentioned it to Laurelann yesterday afternoon, and she said, oh, there's another thing that maybe we should do to try to get you back into balance.
And also the other thing is, when we do a healing, a lot of times it is going to be disruptive to whatever your normal reality is.
Yeah, because we learned I had 3 chakras that were somewhat off.
Right, and we focused on the lowest affected one. Yep.
So there's 2 other ones that still could probably be balanced, but just fixing or correcting that one probably sent some ripples through the rest of me that are then now my body's trying to
And it's a reminder that, anytime you have any kind of healing done, it's important to take care of yourself and rest and cleanse and
not always expect
bath
immediate results. Like, I am still waiting and wondering what's going to happen, because we did talk about the fact that Laurelann had some visions when she was doing my healing, but I didn't particularly see or have anything like that. And so I'm wondering if over the next few days in my dreams or in my meditations, I might see some things. And
and tomorrow is the new moon, so tomorrow is going to be a really important day for putting your intentions in for whatever transformation you're looking to do, whatever new project you're looking to rebirth or birth. Tomorrow is the day to.
And we're going to be doing some stuff for that too. So she'll still be here tomorrow night. So we're going to do some stuff with the new moon.
Yeah. But the other thing that I did for her this morning, when we realized that maybe there was still, some. Sometimes if the energetic field is a little bit resistant to change, it can be that the fight or flight reflex has been kind of stuck in the on position for a while. And I was so happy to be able to do it in person, because we had been doing them online in our classes, and I was having a hard time really feeling exactly what happens during a decoupling process. So what we do is the person lies down, and I'll start with one hand under the heart, under their back. And I just focus on aligning the heartbeat with the beat of the earth. So it's sort of like I'm sitting on the ground, she's on the ground, her heartbeat is going through my arm into the ground, into the earth. And then once I sense that is at a nice calm pace of beating, then I put my hand under her hips for the second chakra, and then I just hold it there. What was it, like 10 minutes?
Yeah, probably something like that.
I hold it there until I feel that those two, the heartbeat and the beat of the chakra and the beat of the earth are all in this sort of smooth, calm, unison, synchronized rhythm. And then once we do that, we close our sacred space. And so I'll be curious to see over the next couple of days how that's feeling.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Yeah.
Maybe I should try to do a headstand sometime today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, I will tomorrow. I'll be doing yoga again tomorrow morning. So we'll find out if I'm still off balance.
Right. And the other, just to recap, because I had been telling people I wanted to explain, even though I haven't done it yet, the extraction process is one where we track if there's an entity in a person's energetic field, and then we invite whatever that entity is to be extracted from the person's energetic field into this so that it can be put back into the earth, where it can be mulched and recycled into something productive and life-giving. And then the last process that we will eventually learn how to do is what we call soul retrieval. And what happens in a soul retrieval is, for many folks, if there's any kind of childhood trauma at all, what has happened is there's a part of that person's soul that just sort of gets sequestered off into a safer space. And so they basically lose part of their childhood if there's any kind of childhood trauma. And so what we do on a soul retrieval is we actually bring that inner wounded child back into the person's energetic field so that that can be healed. And what often happens is that a person becomes much more playful and much more joyful in life because that part of the child has been reclaimed. Fun. Yeah. And then actually then we'll also be learning death rites as well. So that's something that we can do as a person is dying. We can help make sure that that soul is sort of encouraged and invited on into
the appropriate place instead of being trapped somewhere.
Exactly. Fun. So that's your introductory lesson in shamanic healing.
It's cool. Yeah. I definitely it's when we started the thing this morning, which is decoupling thing this morning. I first laid down on the ground and I immediately went, ugh, my back hurts. This doesn't feel good because my back was sore from doing yoga yesterday. And then when she put her hand under the heart part, it started to feel better. And as I breathed through that for a while, it started to feel better. And then as soon as you put your hand under the hips part and really were under both for a while there, it suddenly felt much more supported, and it just felt stable and safe. And then when we were done, it like my whole body just felt better. Like just that brief time of having those two arms, like, you know, under the body, there was something that kind of shored me up or something. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was like that kind of a feeling. And so it was a cool thing to start the process feeling like, oh, I'm in pain and I'm whatever, you know, I'm old and all these things. And then by the end I was like, oh, that feels good. You know, the same thing with the healing the day before. It was like, okay, this is new to me. I don't know what this is like. This is going to be interesting. I wonder what it's going to be. And then, you know, just the pressure points on the head and just that feeling of a deep relaxation were both, you know,
nice,
helpful, you know. And again, I don't know what's going to come from either of them yet, but it just the sense of calm. You know, I know we've talked about, you and I've talked about meditation a lot. There are many days where I can really feel when I need to do my meditation, because if I'm in like all of an agitated state, or if I'm in a fight or flight moment, or if I'm having big emotions, there are times where I can just tell that taking that time to just sit with my eyes closed, repeating my mantra, like that is like just all it takes is just hearing my mantra in my head over and over again to just calm me down. And sometimes it can turn Karen in an awfully bad mood to Karen in a great mood. And sometimes it can turn Karen in an awfully bad mood into Karen into a slightly better mood. And but it almost never goes Karen in a not good, you know, not a good space going to it. I don't think I've ever gone out of a meditation feeling worse than I did
Right.
going into
Right.
it.
And they do say in our shamanic training that the worst that could happen is nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people come in and they're just so resistant to it, they try it and nothing happens. And that's fine. We haven't done any harm.
Yeah.
And it's a consent-based practice. So I would never do work on anyone unless that person wanted
Well, and it's
that work to be
important as a
done.
person, if you're going into it, is you have to make sure that you're ready.
Yeah.
Like as soon as Laurelann said, "Do you want to do this with me?" I was like, "Sure, let's try it." Like I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm game. Let's try it.
Right.
I'm the kind of person who is like, if there's a 1% chance it'll help me, and I knew it was a bigger percentage chance to help you to be able to practice it on somebody. It was like a no-brainer. And if it ends up bringing me anything, I mean, it did. It brought me relaxation in that moment, so it was worth it no matter what. And even if nothing else came out of it, it's still worth it because it gave you the chance to work on something, and it gave me, a moment of
and this is all helping me understand how to work with clients, what clients are getting out of it, and that's all part of the process. And I do remember reading in one of my course materials this morning that when two people enter into a healing learning experience, it's already a sacred relationship.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I want to end by telling the way we met because I think it's a lovely story and I think it is an important message for everyone.
Okay.
So we met at Boston University years ago.
I was a sophomore.
And I was a transfer student, and transfer into and out of the Boston University theater program doesn't really work. So I was effectively a first-year student.
And you were a theater studies major just like me, right?
Well, I started out as an acting major before they kicked me out.
Okay. So this is the thing. So when you go to Boston University for their BFA program in theater, at least back in the what I loved about it is that I was a person who had been acting in plays since I was like 5 years old, and I was a singer in choir, and I was always a performer. And then when I got to high school, I started to have these ideas of wanting to do more. I could read a play and I could go, yeah, I love that play and that's a great character and I want to play that character. But after a while, I realized that I was not a good enough actor to bring to life what I saw in the play. And luckily I had a great teacher who said, you should direct. Because at that point, I don't think I even knew that was a thing. And so I directed my first play in high school, and it was brilliant because I was like, oh, I can tell someone else what I think is going on with this character, someone who's way better at this acting thing than I am. And they can breathe life into this character with my vision of like what the artistic moment is of that. And so when I got to Boston University, what I loved about it is they had a theater studies program, which was for people like me who didn't want to be an actor, didn't want to be a technician, wanted to be something else, like a stage manager, a dramaturg, a director, playwright, those kind of things. And so when you did that, their brilliant thing, one of the things I will always think it was brilliant about this is that you had to do 2 freshman years. You had to do a freshman year as an acting major where you literally did every freaking thing that actors had to do. And then you spent a year doing technical theater, and you could do it either way. You could start with technical and then switch to acting, or start with acting and switch to technical. I started with technical because I think I felt more comfortable with that. So by the time I was in my sophomore year, I was in my freshman year as an acting major. So I was going through the acting program, and that's when we met.
So we were in, I think, the same track of classes. They divide the freshman class into 3 or 4 groups. And so we go
you had like one teacher who was like your primary teacher, but then you went to all the other teachers for voice and speech and movement. And we learned how to juggle, and we learned how to wire walk, and we learned how to,
So there we were in this movement class, right, doing some random morning stretch. There was a partner stretch. And the instructor, who I don't remember him being particularly like fluffy, friendly, feel good.
Who was
Bill
that?
Finley.
Was that Finley?
That was Finley.
God, that was Finley. Okay.
So we're doing our stretch.
Was not There was nothing Finley and fluffy, even though they sound relatively similar, and no connection there at all.
So he says to the whole class, he's like, all right, turn to your partner and say something nice to them. And we I don't remember what was that.
I don't remember what was that either.
We just looked at each other and we each said something nice about the other person. And it was like, bam.
And then
that was it. The friendship was sealed.
Sealed from that moment on.
Yeah.
And then I directed you in a couple of scenes.
Yes.
That wasn't for locals, was it?
It was for
was it
locals.
for locals? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All the BU peeps are going to know what we're talking about. Everybody else is like, what are they talking about? Locals?
There was this thing called Lunchtime Locals, and there was this beautiful old part of this building. I don't even know what
it used to be
like
a car dealership.
Yeah, it was like a tire store or a car dealership. So there was this big old, like this huge room that had like staircases going up. And it was this, and that's where we met for Lunchtime Locals every Friday.
I think, yeah.
And it was like an hour or two, and it was kind of like open mic for theater students.
So you just do whatever
anybody can get up and do whatever they wanted. And so people would plan, people would get up and sing, and people would like get up and
I think
just
Rob
monologue.
Devaney did a poetry reading of James Brown's I Feel Good.
Oh my God, that's awesome. I don't remember that at all. But we did lots of fun things. Like, were you part of the "you can leave your hat on" thing?
Well, I was supposed to be, but something happened. I had an event and I was missing it. So
yeah, and that was one of the great things about locals is it was that sort of catch-all of like open mic kind of a thing. But it was also a thing that the teacher that was your teacher that you were on track with was helping you try to this is actually funny, much like the healing thing that we were talking about. They would work with you and go, what are your issues? As an artist, what is holding you back? And I don't remember who my teacher was. I don't believe it was Finley, because God knows I don't know that I would have done well with him as mine. But one of the things that was holding me back back then was this, I was, young. I was still young, and I had this feeling I was always the perfect little good girl. I was the little Catholic girl who did exactly what her parents wanted her to do, and what her teachers wanted her to do, and what her friends wanted to do. And my whole life was all about being this perfect little person, feeding everybody else's idea of what I was and not feeding who I was. I don't think I even at that age had a clue as to what I was or what I wanted to be. And one of the things that I was challenged by my teacher was, because I was so like raised with that Catholic mindset, I had a very, I don't think I'd say puritanical, but I definitely had I had weirdness about like sex and nudity. And like, I was not very open with any of that kind of stuff. I was not comfortable talking about it. It was just a very kind of closed part of me. And so one of the things that my teacher challenged me with was, they said, you need to do something that scares you when it comes to like sexuality and putting yourself out there in a overtly sexual sort of a way, because that is a thing that often as actors, directors, playwrights, we are often confronted with things that make us uncomfortable, whether it be societal problems, whether it be our own internal struggles, we're often tasked with having to do something that makes you uncomfortable. And so that was the big deal for me when we did a bunch of girls and I got together and we choreographed a striptease to "You Can Leave Your Hat On," which didn't end up with a full striptease or anything, but we were teasing everybody, and everybody thought we were naked under our coats. And at the end we were in like tube tops, and I think we were in tube tops, and I think we were in like boxer shorts. We got some of our male friends to donate boxer shorts that we wore, so it was like we were teasing them like we were going to be naked when we dropped the coats, but we totally. And
then the guys in our group paid us back by doing their own striptease, and they had cut out the ass cheeks of their jeans.
I forgot about that part. That's right.
Right?
It was so great because it really was liberating. I mean, to have to choreograph a striptease when you're such a
Right. But my whole point for telling that story is that it was a tiny moment where all we did was, someone who we barely knew, we just said something nice to each other. So I'm going to challenge every single one of you, in whatever location you are today, find someone and say something nice to them.
And like all that stuff. I love it when, the whole pay it forward thing, like more and more nowadays, I'll like hear stories of somebody going to Starbucks and they start to order something and the person says, "Oh, the person that went before you paid for your coffee, so bye." And it's like, I love hearing little things like that. Or people just putting money in parking meters when they see that it's expired because they don't want the person to get a ticket, or I just think that's like, it's those little things. Or just one of the things that was hardest for me during the pandemic is when I walk, I smile at people, and I would be like smiling, but they can't see it. my mask on. So like, it was really interesting. I don't know if you noticed this in your world, but like everybody in my neighborhood, we all started like, we were waving at each other going, hi, because that was the way that you could say, I'm not scowling at you underneath this piece.
I recognize that you're
you
human.
You can see it a little bit in people's eyes. Like, I mean, you definitely can see when people are smiling, in their eyes, but it's a lot easier if you see somebody going, hi.
Right. So yeah, on that note, have a great weekend and explore the new moon tomorrow. Set your intentions for whatever rebirthing and renewal that you want, and be nice to each other.
Bring positivity into the world.
Right?
That's what we're all about.
Boy, we need it.
We do.
We do.
We really do. If everybody just tries to do it a little bit, the ripples are endless.
Exactly. It's the little changes that can get bigger and bigger. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you next time.
Here.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.